All right. Episode 10, Man's Guide to. We have a repeat guest here with me and Will, which is Jay from the first episode, lifelong friend. And our special guest today is my own father, Curtis. And I assume everyone wants to get some knowledge from my dad. I know I do. Try to find out whatever his secret was, but maybe whatever other questions we might have. So I know I don't. How many episodes have you had a chance to check out, Dad?
To be honest, your first episode and probably half of a couple others because we got into it and it wasn't for me. So,
Okay, that's fair.
And that's probably about it.
Well, which makes sense because, you've been married for, 50 years?
Well, when you guys got on, when you guys got onto your, your woman problems, I don't have those problems, so I don't need to talk about that.
Well, that's kind of why I was excited to get you on, because I'm honestly, and that's kind of where I would like to start. I know you and Mom met when y'all were, 15?
I was 15.
Well, y'all got married at 15.
No, I was married at 16.
Oh, well, but I imagine there was, courting period and all that, so y'all met about 15.
Yeah.
And you are now how old?
56.
So that was 41 years. I don't know if you have a definitive answer for this, but how? I mean, I've had a lot of women throughout my 33 years of life, and I probably started actually dating girls at probably 4th, 5th, 6th grade, just little girlfriend type things, but actually dating, I would say probably around 13. How did you 41 years, you got to have some kind of secret that guys our age especially, and even younger, and the people who listen to us don't really understand that concept, because the women we meet, it's just not there.
Well, honestly, I think it's more about the guy.
True.
You have to, if it's something you want, then, even though sometimes you think you're right, you have to say you're wrong. Otherwise, it's not worth the battle. And, you can, a woman has an art of making you feel little bitty, rotten, and, you just have to figure out how to not let it get that far. You got to know which battles to fight for and which are not to fight for. And
so you're saying
most guys your age, they pick the wrong battles, and you fight all the way, and they are not giving up, and so you let it get too far. Every day is not a piece of cake in a marriage.
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, let me ask you this then. Because like you said, you guys pretty much got started at about 15.
Yeah.
What age were you when you realized that? Because I know you didn't know it off the bat, because I know you came from really rough beginnings. You didn't have your actual dad. The man that you call dad, that we have his last name, died at a young age when you were at a young age. So you didn't really have someone there to show you that and teach you that. So what was it that, how old were you when you realized that, and what was it that helped you realize that?
Yeah, that's a rough question. I don't know. I started playing music in a bar with my mom's bar when I was probably 13.
Okay.
So I worked 7 nights a week for many years. and I think the work ethic is a big part of it. But when I met your mom, it was at a gig I was playing. That's where I met her.
Side note, real fast, before you go any further, just for any listeners, I just want to let y'all know how smooth my dad is. When he met my mom, he stole a hat off of her head, told her, if you want your hat back, you will see me again, and she still hasn't gotten her hat back. So I just wanted to throw that in there.
That's a great anecdote.
Okay, all right. So go ahead, Jeremy. What do you have off of the piggyback?
Well, your dad lost his dad at a very early age. I think it's kind of important for guys to have a mentor growing up or have somebody to look up to, especially a male figure. Who was that in your life?
Well, my dad passed when I was in sixth grade, so I would have been about 12. My mom remarried his cousin, and we actually moved from the town I grew up in, my hometown, which was different for us, to the Army life in Clarksville, Tennessee. And we hated it. Me and my brothers hated it because we grew up in the same town. But Calvin, my dad's cousin, was a nice man, and you know, I learned a lot from him because he was a single man, and he took on my mom, and there were 3 brothers and 3 sisters, so 6 of us. And, you know, so I learned a lot from him, especially about how to get along with a woman, because my mom and him didn't have the best relationship, but he always caved. He always backed away. He would never raise a hand to her. He would let her win the battles, and that got them through the next day. Now, you know, there's a lot more to that story. It worked till we moved back to New Mexico, and then they wound up getting a divorce. But it was, you know, to the day, he never raised a hand to my mom. So I respect Calvin quite a bit. He was in my life when I did marry Teresa. He was at my wedding, even though they were divorced by then. So he's probably the one who helped me through that initial period of getting past where my dad passed away. But I'll be honest with you, a lot of it was my wife. You know, when you get married at such a young age, I mean, we grew up together. I didn't have necessarily a young adult life. All of my peers were much older than me when I went to work full time after getting my associate's degree, and I had to wait for my associate's degree until my high school class graduated. So I got my 2-year college degree before my high school class graduated, but I couldn't.
And you were doing this in a time before computers and stuff. You were doing this by mail correspondence and stuff, right?
No, I went to Roswell, Eastern New Mexico University.
Oh, okay.
So my principal let me out of high school early enough to take a GED. That allowed me to start college courses. So I did work study at school, and I held down 2 other jobs for 2 years. I went to work at 15.
So it was more like, I mean, she had a lot to do with your maturation, probably, but
she had great parents. Okay, she had both parents from the get-go, so she had all the skills of the family life. I had kind of the messed up. And what was important to me, though, was taking care of your kids. That was important to me. Like Eric alluded to, the man that I call Dad adopted me when I was probably 10 or 11 years old. My blood father, I could give a crap about, because he didn't care about me. So I love his mother and father, my grandparents. He has brothers and sisters that I care about, but him, I don't give a crap about. I don't even know if the man's still alive. But that's why I raised my kids, as Eric can attest, how hard I was on him when things got rough with him and Kennedy, that the most important thing to him, I mean, Jeremy, I can tell you how many times he was ready to run off to Colorado to go hang out with you. But that would mean that Kennedy had to grow up without Dad.
Yeah.
And that wasn't going to happen, you know?
Yeah.
So, you know, Eric and I had many talks about that, and it's real important to me to take care of your kids. So good on all of you, you know, all of you at least, you know how important the kids are. You're their dad, whether you're fighting with their mom or whether things aren't going smooth, the kid needs to be taken care of.
No, I have a weird question. And obviously, with me being your son, if you can't get into much detail, of course, don't. But I remember growing up and never, like, I don't really have any memories of you and Mom fighting.
The same thing.
Was that just like, did it just never happen? Or was it like you guys had enough ability within yourselves to realize, okay, I might be pissed off at you right now, but we will handle this when they are asleep or gone or whatever the case is? Like, that's because that was one of the biggest things with me and my ex-wife was like, when the shit got started, that was it. And a lot of that was her, because I would try to hold back, but I only had so much in me before I had to say, all right, fuck it, I got to go in. Like, was there, like, of course you guys probably argue, but, like, how were you guys able to maintain that for us growing up? Because you had 6 kids, and I can't think of one of us that can say, oh, yeah, I remember this big fight between Mom and Dad, or I remember them arguing about this. Like, we don't have that.
Well,
right. And also, second part to that question, what would you guys argue about?
Well, every person as they grow up gets into things they shouldn't, whether it's you know, gambling or habits or you know, things that piss the other one off. So there were arguments, and they were always about something I did that was wrong. And I've had those moments where I'm like, you know, I'm tired of arguing. I got to go, you know, run away. But you can't, you know, it's something you just have to deal with it. So, in answer to your question, Eric, yes, we had plenty of arguments, but they were always behind closed doors after kids were asleep. You know, I worked a whole lot, so there was a whole lot that I wasn't at home for.
Yeah.
So that made it easier. And then by the time I did get home, of course, she was still mad at me. She puts on a good facade for the kids. She does. And then behind closed doors, we go at it again. But it was always, that was something that we've always said we'll never do it in front of the kids.
So you guys made a conscious effort between each other to say,
from day one,
when shit does go bad, they can't see it. No matter what, they can't see it.
Yep. There was whether it was a book or some guy on the radio, I can't remember what it was, but there was some advice that we took early on. And it was the secret to a happy marriage is to never go to bed mad at each other. Always before you close your eyes, always be at least to the point where you can tell the other person that you love them.
Side note, and a bit of a joke, only because I'm watching American History X. That sounds like the same advice that he got in prison. No matter how mad she is, leave her away, or send her away happy. This is what he told him in the movie. When he was in prison, he said, no matter how mad your woman is, make sure she leaves happy. And that's what it sounds like you're saying is like, no matter how mad y'all are, at the end of the night, make sure y'all are happy going to sleep.
It's not necessarily happy, but you have to get to the point. In other words, you have to argue long enough to the point where at least you can show the love.
Okay.
So that argument may last till 2 a.m. If you're not ready, if they're still, and I'm not going to say hate because it was never hate, but if the anger is still there so much that you can't look to your spouse and let them know you love them, then you're not done arguing. So you don't go to sleep yet. And if you can't do it, then you don't go to sleep. And you wake up, or you don't wake up because you never went to sleep, and you go to work the next day and you're tired as hell. But at least you held up to the bargain.
I gotta say, Dad, you are...
Well,
You're stronger than me, man. That's for damn sure.
so the second part of that question was, what are the common things you would argue about? Like, because for me, I feel like it's always money.
Well, money is always an argument. I figured out
try to
early.
stay away from them.
I figured out early that money is something I make, and she loves to spend. So that's fine with me. She pays the bills. I don't have to worry about the bills. If I need something, I will ask her for some money. Now, granted, it's gotten a whole lot easier later in life for her to give me money. Early on, when she's raising a family of 6 on a budget, there wasn't a whole lot left over for me to have a little change in my pocket. So there were some arguments about that where I would, because I'm the man, I make the money, give me some,
Okay, real fast, I'm gonna let you get back to finishing Jimmy's question, but for me, and this is one of my, I think probably one of my biggest issues. Not that I've experienced with women, but I personally cannot see myself knowing that I'm the one who busted my ass all week. I literally have never handed over a paycheck to any woman I've ever been associated with, ever, because in my eyes, that's mine. I worked for it, but at the same time, I suck at managing money. So how were you able to say, at kid number 2, say at kid number 2, how were you able to say she knows better what to do with this money than I do?
It was while we were dating, Eric.
What?
Your mama.
That's probably the smartest thing, though.
Your mama manages money like nobody I've ever. She pinches a penny and gets by. If it were up to me, if the money was in my pocket, I would have a new guitar every week.
Right?
I'm selfish that way.
Yeah.
But
yeah, same here.
that's the way. Yeah, sure. I earn the money, but it's not. See, your mom has only actually had a job twice in her life out at Quadrant.
Yeah, I remember.
She has been able to be a mom, and that's why you kids turned out so well. It's because you had a parent at home. That's what's wrong with today's society. The kids don't have parents at home. They're both parents working. Therefore, somebody else who really doesn't give a crap about the kid is raising them.
Right.
And so I figure if she's, and that's something that a lot of people don't understand. Being a housewife or a house husband is work, but they don't draw a paycheck. So I always have said, I work the hardest for no money at all. And my wife works hard and she gets a good paycheck. So
that's
from
fair.
From the very beginning, it has been our money, and that's how a relationship stays together. You don't argue about money because it's not my money or her money; it's our money.
Mr. Young, this is Will. I want to jump in and just salute you, and I want to say though this type of philosophy you're talking is, to the respect of this podcast, is definitely true man's guide, but I would say it's almost lost in today's world.
Yeah.
I say that because
I
have a sister who's very similar from how you're describing your wife. However, and this is a huge, maybe a whole other discussion too, she's also the breadwinner too. So she's the one working and putting things down on the table when it comes financially. She's also incredibly efficient with money. And her husband, I always tell him, like, you better not mess up, man, because I will come and hunt you down, because he has it so made. But on the flip side, he holds his side of this balancing act down really well. And a lot of people look at them, and I've heard people make comments, how is he a stay-at-home mom? People give him hell all the time. But the reason I respect him is because he enables and empowers my sister in a lot of good ways. He's not the bum staying at home. He's doing his part to ensure that this marriage is as strong as possible. And that includes making sacrifices. But to come back to everything you're saying, which is really amazing, and I think it goes over most people's heads nowadays, is kind of how your personal philosophy and principles were 100% embedded in you, obviously before you met your wife, but then they became crystallized when you met your wife too, to enable you to get through 40 odd years of being married together. What have you seen change or in society to make people kind of just different than your generation?
Well,
I think what he's trying to say is, why can't we find what you found?
Everybody can find it. Look, there are dual working parents who actually figured it out how to make good kids. Okay. But most of them, if you're going to take the time to both of you work because you feel like, number one, why does everybody think they have to have two people working?
Well, I'll tell you right now, just as a single dad working with just one kid that I have to take care of, I can tell you myself, a second income is what makes you comfortable and what gives you that extra space. I don't have extra space. I have what I have, and I fight for that. So I think it's an economical issue, as well as, like you said, money is one of the major things that you guys ever fought about. But like in y'all's time, you weren't looking at, like, you were probably making what I'm making now when y'all first started, but shit didn't cost what it cost. So it was easier. You know what I mean?
Well, I want you to think about this for a minute, Eric. When we first moved to Alamogordo, there were 4 children living in that house on Jefferson.
Yeah.
4 children. I was making at that time, about $28,000 a year. And I had a car payment. So car payment, house payment, insurance payments, all the normal bills. And we actually had cable TV in the house. So, that house.
No, this is the 80s, Jeremy. We left when I was 3. So you're talking by 87, we were gone.
But
right, okay, follow you.
You got to, but that income, that job, and it was a good job out of the base. It was a good job. I think I was making like $9 an hour. Okay, but it was steady work, so a little unlike what you're doing right now, where it's not always steady.
Yeah.
There was that, but I had 4 kids I had to work. I hated that job.
But you had more than one, though, didn't you?
Well, the reason I had more than one is because I was a young man who wanted to have something extra. So I had extra jobs. But who suffered for that? I did, because I don't remember a whole lot. And I'll tell you right now, that's the one thing I regret in all of this, is I don't have a whole lot of memories of kids at young ages, because I was always working. But the kids turned out okay because they had mama.
Yeah.
So, in my opinion, the reason in today's society you have dual working parents is because kids nowadays, and I say kids, and that's all the way up to 40 years old as far as I'm concerned, They want they want a little bit more than they can afford. And where a lot of people get in trouble, and this is an age-old thing, is credit. Everybody goes out and gets credit cards, and you spend more than you have, and therefore you're always struggling. Well, that's one thing I learned, and I did it as a young man too, is that, if I can't afford it, we don't buy it.
Yeah.
And that's how you save money. But I'm at an age now where I'm almost at the end of my working career, thank God, and I get to stop and smell the roses a little bit. But I've got a nice nest egg saved up so that we can afford to do it. And and I'm going to do it with the woman that I've known my whole life, and everybody else knows that. And
that's something that's really cool to me, but also that, like, I mean, I have one from high school who that would have been awesome, and if I had made a different choice when I graduated high school, could have possibly been, an option. But at the same time, like, looking at our lives now, like, I'm real happy for her, and I wouldn't have my daughter now if I had done that either. But I think one of the biggest reasons why I wanted to get you on here was, like, I've always been astounded by, like, where you came from, where you are now, and what you did to get there. But as you were saying before, like, you missed out on a lot of things because you were always working. And that's kind of how I feel somewhat with my daughter now, because I don't know. I miss out because I'm working, but the days that I get her is the days I'm not working. But if I had her during those days, I think I would still miss out on that. But, like, I don't know. It's kind of like, how did you manage to still be the guy you are? Like, because I know in my eyes, my sister's eyes, like, you're the point where, like, when they look at a man, they want someone who can level up to that. Where I look at myself as a man, I want to be able to reach that.
Well, part of that is having your kids grow up respecting both parents. And that, a lot of that respect comes from your mom always made sure you kids understood the sacrifices that I was going through to be able to provide. And I made sure you guys understood what a great mother you had at home. So if you grow up with your parents telling you and emphasizing and demonstrating what you have, then you grow up knowing that that's what I want to be. That's what I want to have. It's all in. Well, first off, you have to have principles. You have to have something to work for. For me, a whole lot of it was to make sure that my kids grew up with plenty. I grew up very poor. My kids were not going to grow up very poor. And I made sure there was an opportunity for every one of my kids to have that college experience if they wanted it. You, son, chose not to, so you are now a working man, which is fine. That's the path you chose. But I did my part to make sure that I was able to provide the opportunity for my kids to have better than I had. And, that was my whole purpose in having a family. I wanted to make sure that my kids didn't have to grow up like I grew up. And, and I didn't have a bad life. I mean, I got to do things that kids today can't do. You can't, I live in a town that could very well be Alamogordo, right, out here in California. Yeah. And I can't imagine kids doing what we did when I was a kid. I was telling Quentin the other day, we're driving out here to see all these vacant fields. I used to go out and chase horned toads and sell them to people from the East Coast because they've never seen one before. Eat prinkled pears off a cactus, and wear flip-flops. Kids can't go out and just do that now because there's so many damn creeps in the world, and it wasn't that way when I grew up. So it's just different.
Is it that
it's like a world of knowledge just thrown in your face?
was it more subtle back then? Like,
I think it was.
I mean, everywhere now.
Well, there are, of course there were creeps back then too, but I think now everybody knows about it more because you have the internet now. They were probably there back then, but parents didn't worry about it because it wasn't in your face every day. Now parents worry about it, so you can't let your kid go out there because now you know.
Do you think media might have a large part in that? Because honestly, like, I know where I live, I'm actually comfortable letting Kennedy run around and do her own thing, like, as I did when I was younger. Like, we lived on an island. It was nothing. When we moved to Korea, I used to run around. Me and Sarah would run around through the streets of South Korea like it was nothing and never worried about anything. And then even, carried on into Japan and then Germany when I started driving and all that. So, like, it was comfortable to me. So I think that made me more comfortable with Kennedy. But, like,
yeah, but son, you grew up living on military bases. I mean, the only time you weren't on a military base was in Korea, where we lived off base. But you were too young. You were too young then to know about.
Well, Germany, we didn't live on base.
Well, Germany, you were a teenager by then. So and you got away with murder in Germany.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, you did.
And Japan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, we roamed like it was like we were trusted by our parents, like, which was probably a mistake, but
both of your parents should have their asses kicked, but
yeah.
You mean both or all three of us? Because Will's here still too, Dad.
Well, that's true.
I don't know. I think we still turned out to be decent men.
I have a little bit more knowledge about Mr. Jeremy there and his shenanigans, or however you say it, shenanigans in Japan.
I think that's why I want to be on here, because, like, this is therapy for me for sure. And, like, all the father figures that I respected, I mean, you're one of them, my dad now, but I mean, I was such a rebellious person. Like, I don't know what caused that. It's weird.
Well,
because now I look back and I'm like, I don't know if it's regret, but it's like, oh, I wish I never would have did some of that stuff.
Yeah, well, that's called growing up, and that's probably, if every parent could start when they were 50, kids would turn out a whole lot better. But unfortunately, we become parents when we're young, and we haven't learned all of the things that we need to know to watch after our kids right. But parents make mistakes, and that dwindles down to kids being able to make mistakes. It's just staying on top of it and make sure that they can recover from the mistakes they make. And sometimes it takes years. And, like I said, you guys have all got your heads together now, and from what I can tell so far, none of you are super bad criminals in the world, so I guess your parents did something right.
Yeah. I guess
I think the biggest part was
better off than the lot.
And then realizing, like, how much your parents did for you, that was
a
bit for me.
Yeah, well,
like when we moved to Maine, I was like, being truly lost,
Yeah. Well, when you're young, your parents are the stupidest people in the world. And they sure do get smart the older you get. They get smarter. And it's not really us that got any smarter. It's the kids who are finally understanding why we did what we did. And you guys are now growing up and understanding it yourselves. And someday you're all going to have teenagers. And they're going to make some of the same mistakes and some brand new ones. And they're gonna hate you for a while, and then they'll love you again, and that's just a cycle of life.
Yeah, I'm fighting against her ever trying to make a mistake. I am working my ass off to make sure she doesn't even think about anything that she might think would be cool, like I did at that time. I'm trying to just teach her now, like, none of it's fun. Like, school is fun. Learning is fun.
So I have a great question.
Stay away from what your dad did.
So,
all right, who's got a question? Jeremy?
I'm sure right now, like, you have Quentin in your house right now, right?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so you had Eric. How similar were those two? One, and two, now that you're older and you know what he's going through, are you trying to do it a little bit differently?
So let me put it to you this way. Quentin and Eric are cut from the same mold. In fact, when Quentin came into this house, his voice, his mannerisms is Eric. It's scary how close they are to with Eric was that age and Quentin. But I learned a whole lot with my son, and Quentin ain't getting by with shit.
Right.
Well, I also help with that too. Even now, I help to make sure.
It, right. You reflect, Eric, and you're like, "Oh man."
Oh yeah. I went from the guy that I went from the ultimate
emotional
black sheep to the one that people would call to say, hey, this is what's going on and I think you could help, to where it is with Quentin now, where it's like even he won't listen to me. Like it really, like what started out as I get to help my nephew and use my experience to get him past this, to not have to go through anything further what I went through, to, well, he's not listening to me anyways. And that's what's messed me up, is like he doesn't listen, just like I didn't listen. I mean, me and my dad went through our stuff together to where I was like, fuck what he has to say. But then I went back very quickly once I got into being an adult and realized I was just an ass, and it wasn't anything he was doing. Like, I associate my revelation as far as, like, understanding you can't blame anyone for anything other than you. And it was because of my dad. Because we went through some stuff that was literally man-to-man when I was still a teenager. And I remember at a certain point in my life, it was just me and him. We were here in New Mexico. We were up in the forest, and we were able to have that conversation with each other, to where I realized in my head, this isn't, like, everything I've done isn't his fault. Like, the stuff I've done was all me. It was just my personal anger. There was a catalyst between me and my dad, but the actual things I did, and y'all were there for almost all of them, it was me.
Yep.
And that's, Quentin's actually coming down here for Christmas in 2 weeks. And that's what I'm hoping to accomplish with him, as far as, because I know I've been a role model to him. I know I've been somebody he's looked up to. And I know it's hard for him to look at my dad and really understand who my dad is. I know my dad's not going to let him get by with shit, but at the same time, I know where Quentin's head is, to where he's like, I can do what I want as long as he doesn't find out, type shit. You know what I mean? Like, and so that's what I'm hoping to accomplish with my nephew, is you got to start seeing who we are, what we're trying to do for you, and what we want for you in life. And that's all from my dad, because if me and my dad hadn't have gone through, you were there the day that it happened, Jeremy. It was me, you, Jeff, and I think Scott Downing at the Freedom Fest, when all of this shit went down that really flipped me onto another side and took me in a direction that I literally was told myself I wasn't going to go. But it happened. It was what it was. But it wasn't my dad's fault, because I could have easily said, that's him, this is me. Instead, I said, instead I said, that's him and I am a part of him. So I'm going to go this way to just completely
and you went
just
way
forget
overboard.
everything I knew in my head was right. I threw it all away.
Yep.
And I've apologized to my dad a million times because I literally, like, I blamed him for so long. And when I got to a certain age, I remember it. We literally shared a cigarette together, something my dad doesn't do anymore, and it was the catalyst of what happened. Something as small as a cigarette, but the way that I was brought up and everything I was told, and that cigarette was like, holy shit. But it set things into motion, and the way it started was the way that it ended, and that's what was really cool to me, was the way that I got set off in my stupidness ended with what set me off.
When was that?
And everybody does things for some reason, and if it's the wrong reason, it's the parent's job to help their kids get through it. And that was just part of what it is. And the show's not about Quentin and all that stuff. So I mean, we need to get off that topic. But
right.
But anyway,
sorry.
what else you guys got on your minds you want to work out?
Well, I'll give it to Will and Jimmy now, because I found a lot out.
Number one. Go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Young, I was going to ask you this. This is Will jumping in right now. And I know you touched upon it in the beginning, and about how you very maturely pick your fights, choose your fights, but then also how you handle your communication with that interpersonal relationship you have with your wife from day one. How has that changed has there been consistency just for 40-something years? Or how have you noticed yourself change from age, I believe you said 15, to now age 50-something? What stages have you changed? How have you changed in your communication with the interpersonal relationship you have with your wife?
Well, early on, just like any young man, I would assume, when you're talking to your spouse or even sometimes your best friends, it's not always 100% truth. You sometimes say what you want, that you think they want to hear. I think what I've learned over all the years that I've had communication with my wife, it's just tell the whole truth. And whatever the topic is, don't tell her the pants she's wearing looks good if they don't look good, because
I love
this is absolutely on point, Mr. Young. I have just that alone. It took me to be like 30 before I was like, dang, telling the truth in interpersonal relationship with a woman is absolutely the best option. So I'm listening, sir. I'm listening.
Right.
No, I mean it's the absolute truth. Early on, arguments or conversations, or a lot of I can't tell you how many times I know that. I mean, that's the other thing. Big thing I learned is when a woman talks to you, you get home. She's been at home all day with kids, or she's been at work all day with other people, and you get home, and she wants to talk to you. Well, you've been at work all day long, and all you want to do is lay down, have a beer, and kick back and relax. You don't want to listen to somebody else talk. And so you do your best to act like you're listening, but it catches up to you because, 2 days later, she says something that was very interesting, and you said, well, I didn't know that. And then she comes back, yeah, you did. We talked about it 2 days ago. I wasn't really listening. Well, I'm trying to do better at that. But, sometimes that's another thing. Guys always want to fix shit. right?
Yeah.
A woman comes to you with her problems. She's not telling it because she wants you to fix it.
She's telling you because she wants you to sympathize.
She wants you to listen to her, not fix it. Just listen. And that is the hardest thing for any man to finally get. Yeah, I think I'm getting there. You know, I don't try and fix it, or I catch myself saying, wait, you don't want me to fix this problem. And then other times it's,
You're getting there after 40 years?
Oh, yeah.
Your awareness is up, or what? It's never been up before?
Yeah, I'm catching myself more often now. So, yeah, it's not perfect yet, guys. It's never going to be perfect.
It's actually, the way I hear it, at least from me, is you care, but you really don't care because you're not letting your emotions get excited from certain conversation. You know that this person, they just want to release and talk. I grew up, I didn't grow up with as many sisters as Eric, but I grew up with 4 women directly in my life. And
pretty much, dude.
I struggled really hard because I struggled, but then I learned. And as a man, for me, it's been but I've got there. It's been a road, but I've learned to say, you know what? Just what you said, the wisdom you said, Mr. Young, it's like I listen. My face looks like I'm listening and engaged, but my care meter is not that high because I realize I could get involved in the conversation and then put a lot of thought into it. And I'm like, this woman just wanted to open up and talk. She didn't really care for what anything was coming out of my mouth. She just wanted to know I was nodding my head and some kind of response was happening right here.
And in fact, when you open your mouth, that's when you get in trouble.
Exactly.
Once you open your mouth and start trying to help, that's when you're in trouble. So, just listen.
Try to understand.
Now, Dad, one of the things, and I know you wouldn't necessarily say this for sure, but one of the things that we have talked about on this podcast before, and one of the things that me and Will really get into, because we don't have a specific woman, we don't have a tight-knit relationship. Like, Jeremy's married, he's got a woman, you've been with Mom for 40 years. One of the things that we have discovered as far as like something that works in our heads and something that we're trying to do is, and it sounds messed up, but training your woman. But listening to what you've told me is like, you've done that, but at the same time allowing her to...
Did you say train your woman?
Yes. Yeah.
Right. No, that's 100% backwards, son.
What?
Yes. The women train us.
Oh.
No.
I don't agree with that.
The women train us.
No,
okay,
I don't agree with that.
No, because then you're giving up being a man.
No, listen, then you will always just have girlfriends. If you want a wife of many years, then you let them train you.
Train in what? In what though? Mr. Young, train in what? In what aspect? In what aspect?
All right. Number 1, the seat goes down when you're finished. That's the woman training you.
Home training. All right, I got you.
That's right.
You brought me back to Germany because you said that in Germany.
Crushed ice, not chipped ice. You let them train you.
Okay.
Hold
on. Wait. No. Okay. I think what you're actually saying is you learn her, you learn what she likes. She's not training you, but you are learning what she likes. So you are giving her what she wants as far as the crushed ice, the toilet seat down. But as far as training her, you're teaching her, like, I am the one that is responsible for what you have. I am the one that's working. I'm the one bringing the money. Yes, I will let you hold that money, but without me, you don't have that money. If you don't want me...
No, hold on.
Careful, you sound like a misogynist.
Eric?
I am misogynist. I'm sorry.
Jeremy's in the corner
Jeremy's a fucking girl.
I don't know whose household you grew up in, Eric, but the moment you walk into a relationship and saying, I provide this for you, if you can have it, if I say you can have it, that relationship is not going to work. That's why I told you early on, I've never looked at it as my money. When I want a relationship, what she does, she doesn't draw a paycheck for, so it becomes our money. If she wants to go out and buy a new pair of shoes, then she gets to go buy herself a new pair of shoes. I don't say, where did that money go? If I need a new pair of shoes, I will say, darn it, I need a new pair of shoes. And we'll go get a new pair of shoes.
I don't know.
That doesn't.
I don't agree with that, Mr. Young.
That doesn't. Wait, Will, wait, hold on. That doesn't feel emasculating to you in any way?
Not at all.
To where you can't say, I worked my ass off all week, I got this paycheck, I need shoes, I'm going to buy them.
You know what feels better? Is when she says, this year, why don't you spend your bonus on you? Then you know that she understands that it's our money as well. I'm just telling you. You know, if you asking me how I did it, that's what I'm telling you. You know, I have never hurt for money. I've never hurt for a thing. I own 2 Harleys.
Well, once you got to a certain point, you didn't hurt for that, but...
Well, you know, irregardless, I had brand new guitars. If it's something that I felt I needed or I wanted real, you know, I would let her know. I would like to have that. I don't just go buy it and say, all right, this week your paycheck is $600 less. You know, that's not responsible when you're raising a family. If it were just me and a woman, no kids involved, then maybe things would be different. But when you have a family, then you have to operate as a family, and you have to give. You realize your role is the provider. You're going to bring the money to the household, and you have to be able to give up some of the reins to let your partner help be a partner. And if you go walk into it with this is mine and I'll let you have some if I say you can, it ain't going to work, bud. I'm just saying.
I say that's true from my experience, too, because the reason why I have a house is because of my wife, because she balances well and I spend money like an idiot.
Yeah, well, you know.
So,
well, I see. I just checked the time. I see we're approaching the hour mark. So if anybody has
dinner.
Well, if anybody has any further questions, because I got one more for my dad, but if anybody else has one for him first, go ahead and ask him. If not, then I'll ask him this one.
This is Will. I just want to say that, Mr. Young, I appreciate you coming on. I think you provided and shared a lot of wisdom, and I see a lot of similarities actually with my dad and my mom who've been married, and I've talked with Eric a couple times about some of the challenges my dad had, but I think, quite honestly, my dad, the whole reason they've been married together I think they're over the 40-year mark too, is the same things you were saying, Mr. Young, very similar things you were saying, Mr. Young. My dad has implemented, and some of the areas though I've told my mom before, I'm like, you know, I don't see how I could ever be with a woman who would like talk to my dad like that, because they have a very interesting interpersonal dynamic. But at the same time too, and I think I still feel strongly in the stance of, you know, if I'm bringing this to the table, this is what I'm actually bringing to the table. What are you bringing to the table? From what I heard you say, you had a high quality partner from day one who only got better over time, and obviously that relationship only enhanced over time. I think quality of people have gone down, both men and women, unfortunately, in the days we live at now too. But at the same time, I think it's critical for people to be balanced in the mature enough to be balanced in the relationship, to know when I'm going to lead and when I'm not going to lead. So kind of going back to the comments you were giving us about when argumentation happens, you have a certain MO that you personally consistently follow, and that you've kind of polished over the years. At the same time, too, you and your wife have an agreement about, you know what, we're not going to bed being at each other's throats. That's an extremely mature. I think not being married. I think that's a vital component, obviously, because that's critical to the communication in a relationship. So. I just want to say thank you, sir. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your wisdom. Thank you.
You bet.
Well, Jeremy, you got anything else?
Yeah, for sure. I wanted to end it by just thanking you and Teresa, because you took me in when I was getting in trouble my senior year of high school, and you didn't have to do that. And I really appreciate that. And I don't know if I ever thanked you for that, but I'm doing it now. And,
well, appreciate it.
Yeah, that's all.
Well, glad you turned out all right there, young man.
Well, not traditionally, but kind of a new thing we've been doing at the end is to ask somebody their top 5 of something. We talked about comedians and stuff last week. But with you, Dad, I can't ask you top 5 country because I wouldn't have anything to compare to. But I would like to ask, like, top 5 bands, in your opinion. Like, what would your top 5 bands be?
Oh, geez. Well, that's kind of changed over time, too. You know, I grew up a country music fan, but entering the biker world, I got a little bit more of the rock and roll back into me. So, you know, I think Leonard Skinner, ZZ Top. Then I got to go back to some country with Alabama, and then individual artists, George Strait, Randy Travis.
So Eagles aren't in there for you?
No, Eagles used to be a part of my rep, but no, there's too many better than the Eagles. No okay. Eagles, no Beatles.
No Beatles.
no Beatles, man.
Yeah, fuck the Beatles. I'm down with you on that, Dad. I like that. I know people are going to be mad at that, but yeah. I like Leonard Skinner as far as music-wise. I don't necessarily like their political stuff, but, you know, music-wise, I like Leonard Skinner.
Hey,
Freebird is the greatest song of all time.
If we want to go off on politics someday, then you better schedule about a 5-hour show, bud.
Hey, when I start Absolute Truth, we will do the political thing, Dad.
Yeah, all right.
And if you need 5 hours, we'll do 5 hours.
Yeah. I don't know that you.
All right. Well, Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say I appreciate you joining, and I appreciate you sharing your wealth of knowledge. Jeremy, awesome that you wanted to jump on again. We haven't had you in a long time. Will, as always, I know you'll get it edited, and we'll get it out there. Man's guide to a man's guide is what I'm thinking, because Dad, you dropped some knowledge on us today, and we can only hope to find what you found. But I really appreciate it, just even giving us the time and skipping dinner and everything. So,
all right, you guys.
I love all y'all, and Will, I'll hit you up here in a minute.
Yes, sir. Take care. Good night, everyone.
All right.
Good night.
Yep.
All right, later.
Later, man.